Welcome back to Loan Officer Success Partner. We've got a really great feature for you guys this week. Rethink everything you know about being a next-gen loan officer. Published author, president of FinLocker, popular podcast, The LOL, Loan Officer Life. Like I said, probably doesn't need the introduction, but Brian Vieaux, welcome to the show, brother.
Devin, man, good to be on your show. We just wrapped you being on mine a few weeks ago, so it's good to continue in the combo.
You know, I was honored to even get a chance to get over there, and man, I really appreciate you jumping on mine too. And I know we talked about some great topics there, but I think one of the things, and this is clearly something you're expert on, you literally wrote the book, is the next gen loan officer, man. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, that's it.
There it is.
Rethink everything. So, you know, let's kind of lead off from there. So what is a next gen loan officer, right? What does that mean?
Yeah. So let me rewind a little bit and just kind of tell you how this came together. Cause I think the story on how it came to be is speaks to the way the next gen loan officer needs to be thinking about themselves and how they show up. So, you know, if we rewind the clock, the calendar, if you will, back to call it August of 2023, I got a package in the mail. You know, who of us that works from home doesn't get excited when you get something in the mail and it doesn't look like it's in a legal folder? So I tore it open, and in it was, where is it? This purple book, right? So this is what I opened. And when I opened it, it was signed by the author, and also signed by this guy, Scott Payne, who I didn't know at the time. And the other thing that was cool was I took it off, and on the cover was a QR code. And so I'm thinking, all right, I'll bite and hope it's not a cyber attack. So I scanned the QR, and a video pops up on my phone, and it's Kyle and this guy, Scott. They're wearing mullet wigs. And I had not met either of these guys. I'm like, what is going on here? And so, Scott basically says, hey, Brian, we don't know each other. I'm a fan of what you're doing on LinkedIn. I thought of you when I read Kyle's book and thought this would be helpful for you. And so Kyle's book is Rethink Everything You Know About Social Media. Easy read, call it 90 pages. I think I got the book on a Friday, and I had read it twice on Saturday. That's how easy it is to read. And it literally changed how I thought about how I was showing up on LinkedIn. That's my primary social media platform. And so I started to take screenshots of pages of the book and posting them on LinkedIn with like my comments, almost like a virtual book report.
I love that.
And about 5 posts in, I get this DM from this guy, Kyle Draper, who I wasn't even connected with yet on LinkedIn.
Yeah, just a mullet video, right, that came with the book.
Yeah. And his message was, hey, man, I don't know you, but, and I'm thinking, oh, I did something wrong. I screwed up, and I gave away his whole book on LinkedIn. And he says, but I appreciate you loving on my book and sharing the content. It's amazing, blah, 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 blah. Would you have 5 minutes to jump on a call sometime? So
huge.
Monday or Tuesday that week, we get on a 15-minute scheduled call that went 90 minutes. And, I learned
together. It's just,
it was,
man. Yeah,
it was crazy. And what I learned was that, Kyle had a vision to write this book. But it was more than that. His vision really was around creating a series of thought leadership books under this Rethink Everything banner. So we got to know each other over that 90 minutes. And, I kind of went away, had a few sleeps, if you will. And then it hit me that the next book was my tentative title was Rethink Everything You Know About Serving the Next Gen Home Buyer. And so I called Kyle and said, hey, man, I think I have your next book. And he said, well, first of all, it would be our book, not mine, meaning his. And so we started, talking about it. And he said, well, what do you know about originating loans? And I said, well, it's been 20 years since I originated a loan. So I know a lot of smart people that are really good at it and really good around the edges. And he said, I don't know anything about it. Never done it. I've got a loan myself, but he's like, why don't we assemble a team of people to help put this together? So
that's awesome.
What started as, let's go get 10 people in the industry that we know, like, and trust, and that others would trust to share their expertise. And it turned into 37 contributors, each agreeing to write a chapter. And each chapter has a QR code, so that the contributing author for the chapter shows up on video. And the feedback has been amazing, right? And I say this, and Kyle says this, our names may be on the cover of the book, but we did this much in terms of the knowledge that was shared.
You framed it together. You framed together all the knowledge that was dropped to put this thing together. Well, I got to tell you, Brian, that was me buying this book.
All right.
And that's me buying the first one from Kyle. So
there you go.
Yeah, you guys got me. Yeah, I need to get in here and read these things. I've heard nothing but, what's funny, guys, is, flash forward to what would it be, 8 a.m. this morning, and we're on the morning show, and got a shout out for the book right there on the morning show, right? So the guest is calling out Brian, saying, hey, I see you, man. You guys got to read his book. So, at the end of the day, here we are talking about it again. I'm definitely going to read this, and maybe I'll have to do that book report. But I think there's something else even, bigger here, because what you said was, here's a guy that's following you on LinkedIn that likes what you're doing so much, and he sends you the book, right? Takes the time to do this wild video, but then you read his book and it changes the way you're thinking about doing things on LinkedIn.
That's right.
Think about how powerful that is, right? The master become, right? You know where I'm going with this. I think I screwed up the quote, but you
got a smart audience.
Becomes the student, right? Yeah, there we go. So, long story short, I've heard great things. So now I've got to read and learn what this thing's all about. But let's talk about it, man. So you've got all these great people that help put this book out. There's, I'm sure we could sit here and list off names all afternoon of everybody that was involved in this thing. And now you've got a book that's telling people this is how you can become a loan officer in this generation today. And a lot of that sounds like it centers around social media. Is that correct?
I would say there's definitely a component of it. There's a section. We essentially have 6 sections of the book, and there's definitely one about social. But I think if I were to break this down into 3 themes, we'll say 3 themes. Number 1 is showing up. We have to show up, and it's not just digitally on social. It's showing up physically in your community, but it's how you show up really, and what you do when you show up that is going to differentiate you. So that's like theme number 2.
Trust is built in small cap promises.
That's it, man. To me, it's trust, it's showing up, and then it's the value you bring. And then I believe the best value that originators bring is education. And so if you show up, and you show up early in a consumer's financial life as an educator first, you're building trust that will translate into the right to win when there's a transaction to be had, versus too many of us, most of us that have been doing this. I wrote my first loan in 1991. And so most of us have been and are dependent on somebody else to bring me a customer.
Yeah.
And if I'm engaging the consumer for the first time at the point of sale, they have contract in hand, transaction to get done, stress and anxiety at level 11, right?
That's right.
I haven't built any trust yet. The trust that I have with the consumer is the referral, and that's fine, and it's been good enough. But I think you have to be more today.
That makes perfect sense, right? Because it goes back to the trust being built in the small cap. But you haven't had a chance to commit to any promises at that point in time.
That's right. Yeah.
Maybe you showed up to a meeting on time, and maybe you provided the data that they asked you for. But is that really trust, right? So what's the suggestion here, right? How do we start building the trust earlier on?
Well, so let me reference a data point that I think will prove out that this is the right strategy. Then we can talk about some of the things that people should be doing.
Yeah.
So last fall, fall of 2024, JD Power released their annual originator satisfaction survey. And there was a point, one of the data points in the survey basically, quote unquote, said loan officers who engage home buyers early, all caps, at the point of thought, win more business, see higher customer satisfaction, and earn greater loyalty. Okay, great. What does that mean? So the data from the survey said that 43% of borrowers in this cohort actually began their contact with a lender before they were actively shopping. That was an all-time high, by the way. And then those consumers who built that early bond with their lender were 20% less likely to contact another lender, period.
Yeah, trust is there.
And then this is kind of the money shot. 54% of those consumers who engaged early with a lender were 54% less likely to submit multiple mortgage applications. So another high water mark if you look at the year over year studies.
Yeah.
And then if you want to tie it all back to, JD's algorithm and their survey, their scoring, the customer satisfaction was 107 points lower when the lender got involved at the point of application versus the point of thought.
Yeah.
Massive.
But it makes so much sense, because I think, in general, we're in a period of time where there's a loss of trust, and for good reason, right? Yeah. So how do you know who you can trust and when you can trust them, and, being there early and showing the commitment that you're not just there to provide the transaction, you're there to provide the financial knowledge, to show up, to be there every time they've got a question, so that when you get to that point of I'm ready to put in an offer, your friends, these are people that you trust, right? And I think that's so important. So, I'll give you an example. We just had one recently, similar situation where the lead was transitioned over at the time of the agent saying, hey, here's a referral I want you to talk to. But the problem was the client's father had a deep-rooted relationship with his loan officer, right? And he said, look, I know that you really like this guy, meaning our loan originator, but this is Tim.
Yeah,
and
my guy.
Tim's been doing our business for 10 years, and I trust him. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to trust him too, because he's the guy, right? So how do you become that, right? Because this is not all the time you're best friends with the neighbor, and that's how the transaction starts. How do you start building your relationships early, Brian? What does that look like?
So this is where I'll kind of, spin into some of the teachings that Kyle Draper, actively coaches
Shout out
on.
to Kyle. Yeah, shout out Kyle.
He's the man. He is the man. And so, again, I'll say this, you have to show up. And so what does that mean? Showing up to me is both, in your community as an expert, as a knowledge source, an education source around financial fitness focused on home ownership.
Amen.
And so you can't really, you don't have any credibility as an expert unless people see you as an expert. And so, we have to show up in places where people are seeking knowledge and be that source of knowledge for them. So, if we take this down to the local level, the community level, it's showing up in the church basement for the monthly home ownership seminar that, the community group is putting on. It's partnering with, financial advisors in the community as a expert resource education provider, as they're engaging their clients who are starting to think about home ownership, not the ready to buy, but they're thinking about it. And so we just have to be there wherever people are in that thinking or thought process. And I think, I never will say it's a bad idea to have strong realtor relationships. That would be stupid. That would be a bad strategy.
Yeah. No, we don't want to love on our realtors at all, right?
Yeah.
Of course,
So,
we've got to have good partners.
So how do I, as a knowledge-based, education-first loan officer, show up that way so that my realtor partners think of me first in that context? And so I think it's partnering in the community with the real estate professional to provide resources to the community that help people think about what it would be like to own a home, whether it's your first home, second home, or 10th home. And so, help your partners show up as experts by being their partner in the financial side of this thing in educating. So let's think the physical part. To me, there's a little bit of Back to the Future going on with
Are
us
you talking about my
needing to
car
show
back
up.
here? Is this no?
Exactly. I think you know the BNI term, and we've all played that game. I think there's value in that again. I think the value in local networking groups can be amplified through social and through
I agree.
digital.
Yeah.
And so what you do to show up physically, you can repurpose and now show up digitally at scale, not just in your community, but in your surrounding communities and even, in a wider swath. So I think we have to show up as educators. It's never been more critical and important. There's a lot of noise out there,
There is.
not just the birds you might hear in the background chirping. Um, the there, we every time we turn around, there's another M&A, acquisition happening where there's the combination of real estate and mortgage coming together.
That's it. Yeah.
What I would tell our audience, your audience, Devin, is the superpower that each of you all have is your hyper local aspect. That you are in the community, rooted in the community, and many of these, M&As that are happening are call center type structures that are coming together, all lead gen or through the web, if you will, and real estate is still done at a hyper local level, and the financing on a purchase of a home, especially for a first time home buyer, is more often done at a local level. So that's your superpower, and you need to lean into it and not be scared by these ecosystems that are getting created. I think it actually is going to be net. It's going to bring more awareness and attention, and you again have the chance to stand out as that local expert.
Well, I love that you said that, man. Yeah, because Brian, we're in an era of technology and AI, and the suggestion here isn't, hey, let's lean into the technology. It's, hey, let's lean into relationships and let's lean into being, the local valuable presenter that's there to help provide financial literacy, right? So, how can you do that, with a combination of both? Well, I think it's two things. Number one, what you talked about is coming out and doing these classes and doing these presentations, but you could use the social platform to get people to the classes, right? So effectively, we're going to announce, hey, we're doing this, this first-time home buyers class, or we're going to do this program on, how to purchase investment properties using a DSCR loan, right? Whatever the case may be, right? Whatever the program that you want to promote is, you can do that digitally. Then you get out and you get face-to-face and you sit down and you break bread and you have this local communication and you could film that. And now you can take that back to social and say, hey, maybe you weren't present but here it is. You can watch it right here, right?
Yeah.
Or you could do a live stream. Hey, we're going to do this presentation face-to-face, but if you can't make it, let's do a live stream so you can sit in and hear what's happening right now. And let's build out some great relationships so that people can see you. What's funny, I had a gentleman that was on my podcast a little over a year ago, and completely different space. Not different. He was in a different space, but he'd become a realtor. And basically, prior to being a realtor, he had a social channel, and the social channel was just about being brutally honest. That was it. Just brutally honest, telling people what they needed to hear, not what they wanted to hear, right? And he'd built a great big social following because he was just laying it out there. He transitions into the real estate space and has a banner first year. Where did the customers come from? The people that already knew him, and they trusted him because he opened up his darkest secrets, right? And put it out there. And they're like, I trust this guy. So now that he's in the real estate space, they already have the trust there, right? So how do you build that trust in your local market? And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think I'll reference Kyle Draper again. And he talks about this a lot in the coaching that he does. We don't need more people, right? We've got our people. We need them to see us more often.
That's right.
They need to think about us more often. And so, there's too often when we talk about showing up on social, everyone thinks they have to have thousands of followers and every post has to go viral. It doesn't. No, you literally, if you have 500 followers on Facebook, you have enough people, because every one of those people have
At
50,
least 500 people.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe 500,
Yeah, maybe, yeah, maybe not 500, but
whatever the number is.
yeah, it's funny you said that, and I can't remember. But yeah, I know you do this. I can't remember if I heard it from you, if I heard it from somebody else. And this is something I wasn't doing, but birthday videos through DM.
Oh, yeah,
right?
that's my jam.
100%. And I think you talked about it, and then somebody came on a week later and talked about it too, right? And so at the end of the day, I was like, man, that is so smart. I love that. And so now every single day, one of the first things that I do is I pop up, look for my birthdays, shoot a video, send it to the DM, right? So you talk about people not thinking that you're being seen because the post didn't go viral, right? Well, one of the birthdays that I did the other day was my high school football coach. And, we hadn't talked in years, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, because of you, Brian, right? And in talking about, doing this, I shoot a video for him. He's never liked on one video, commented on one video, never shown any interest whatsoever in what I'm doing on the channel. But when I sent him the birthday video, he responds back and he's like, man, thank you so much. That means so much. I really, love to know that I made an impact on all you kids that I coached over the years.
Right.
And, by the way, you're crushing it with what you're doing. I love everything you're doing on social media, right? And your business. And
I get those
it's
type
so
of
funny
messages.
that you talk about that because so many people get hung up. Yeah, they get hung up, and it's like they're watching you. I promise you that they're watching. So don't get hung up on the likes and the comments, right? We want those. That's great. It gives you that that social acceptance, right? But the reality is, people are watching what you're doing. They more than you realize.
I love that, Devin, because it took me doing like the one-to-one messaging, the DMs, and getting that affirmation back, where somebody that never once took a split second to put a thumbs up on a post. I'm
right.
Like, guys, some love. And but there I was seen and I've been heard. And as long to me now, when I put any content out, I just want to reach one person. That's it.
That's it.
And
yeah,
it's always going to be more than that. But that if it reaches one and it's impactful for one, and it doesn't even have to move the needle in my business per se, it's a benefit. And the other thing on social, and some people are like, well, I don't have anything to say. Well, that's garbage. If you're in the business and you're engaging with consumers and referral partners every day, you have plenty to say.
Plenty. Yeah.
You could literally, before you sign off for the night, to talk into your camera or type into your GPT, what are the 5 most interesting conversations you had today, right? And there's the next 2 weeks worth of content that you can put out.
That's it. Well, and think about that from another perspective too, because a lot of the times everyone wants to share the win. Hey, let me tell you how I helped this client get qualified and what we did. And people want to hear that, right? But why don't we talk about the loss, right? Hey, we had this customer who had gone another direction, and when they arrived at my doorstep, this is what was going on. And unfortunately, this is what had happened to them, right?
Yeah.
Don't let that happen to you. Right.
That's
These
right.
are things that you need to be thinking about. Guess which one people are probably going to gain more knowledge from?
Oh, yeah.
From the loss, from the failure.
And trust.
And the trust. Yeah, because you've got the nerve to step up and tell people the truth. I love that we started this by talking about the next gen loan officer. But what we're really talking about is going back to the roots of human relationship. Right. Now, we may be using some next gen techniques to make that happen. But we got to stay rooted, guys, right? That's really what Brian's talking about here, is stay rooted and become the person that people can trust.
That's what, like, as I've gone through this, like it sits on my desk literally every day, and probably at least twice a week, I'll just open up a chapter and kind of flip through, and it just inspires, ideas and thoughts. There's very, very, very little in this book that I would call like next gen from a technology and execution perspective. It is really kind of the roots, if you will. It's rooted in modern technology.
That's
but
right.
If you were to back off the technology and just think at the core what's going on, it's relationship development. And it's what a lot of what we talk about in this book, and what I talk about a lot, and I know you coach on this, and Scotty's coach on it. It's how do I have meaningful impact on a one-to-one basis, but also at scale, right? And that's the social part of it is making sure that you're seen where people are looking for you, because you could get referred tomorrow, by an agent. And if you have no presence on the web, sorry, you're not, you get, it's like, who is this person? It's a ghost that they don't exist. So people they're checking you out. The minute they get that referral, they are checking you out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's your report card, right? Like, can I trust this person? Well, let's see. Are they real? Do they have a family, or are they, or in a relationship? Are they actually active? Who is this mysterious person I'm supposed to trust? Right. Yeah. I love that. Well, Brian,
I got a really interesting thought for you, because you and I, I'm sure, are the same way. On my screen, I have two screens, and one of the windows that's open all day long is Redder. And so,
yep, I could share mine.
Just about every conversation that I'm having with or about an originator, anytime I see something on social posted by an originator, I go to Reddit. I'm like, who are these people? What do they do?
Yeah,
I'm like looking them up.
Yeah.
Now, here's my thought. How would we feel as a loan officer if our prospective borrowers had access to Redder?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
How would that work?
Yeah. Who am I really working with? Are they truly experienced? Right. Yeah. No, that's so smart, and it's so powerful. And I do the same thing. Redder's literally up in my background. I'm looking at it right now. And at the end of the day, what am I using it for? A lot of things. I don't just use it to look up a loan officer, but look up a market, to see what's going on in the industry, to see who's having success. But also, a lot of the times I'll use it because it gives direct links to Facebook and direct links to Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And I can go see who the person is and how socially active they are, so that when I have a conversation with them, I'm able to have an educated conversation. I know who you are, and I actually am really impressed with what you're doing. And man, I'm super excited to have this conversation with somebody else who's, contributing back to our industry, right? So shout out to Redder, shout out to Kyle Draper, shout out to Scott Hudsmith and Stephen Wyants, some of the people that, we associate with every single day that are truly contributing to the space too, and you, Brian, you, Finlocker, a published author, podcast, right? There's so many good people out there right now that are delivering what people need to hear. And you are one of those people that's out there and that's active and that's giving people the information that they need in today's mortgage market. So, Brian, I'd love to keep you here all day, man. What's one thought we can leave somebody with?
I'll go back to what we opened up with. It's don't be solely dependent on talking to consumers for the first time at the point of sale. And I commented on somebody's post earlier today, half kind of snarky, but if you're, so here, I'll share this. Yesterday, I presented to a group of loan officers here in Michigan, and I asked a question. I said, show of hands, how many of you are 80% or more reliant on all of your business from your referral partners? I said, this is not a judgment at all. And I would say 60% of the room raised their hand, which means 80% is probably the right answer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, everybody's a little timid to put that hand up, right?
And so I said, first of all, congratulations. That means you've established, a high level of trusting relationships with those referral partners. I said, and this is not, because there was realtors in the room too. And I said, this could be reversed, guys, for you agents as well. We talked about all these ecosystems that are getting developed and all, these powerhouse, marketing arrangements between these big brands. If you as a loan officer and frankly, you as a realtor are not showing up earlier in these home buyers' lives and are just waiting at the point of sale, you will be replaced. You will not have a spot. You will not have a seat at the table in 5 years. That's the fact of the matter. So we all need to become kind of this hybrid consumer direct, distributed retail loan officer in our own, in our community. And it's frankly never been easier with the tools that you have right here on your phone.
You're right. You're right. There's so much knowledge out there, so much power, and that's the other thing, guys, what Brian's talking about here is so smart. Don't get replaced. Get in front of that and start building the relationships and the bonds with your customers early. and use some of the techniques from here. Pick up the book, read it, jump on a podcast, right? You know, I mean, that there's so many different things out there. You're on a podcast right now. So hopefully if you've got to this point, you're one of those people that's an action taker and goes out and does what it takes, right? But man, there's so many different places that you can go get information on how to be more successful at what you do and how to create more success for your clients and for your agents. You know, so I'm glad that you guys got here and got to hear Brian, because I get to talk to him literally every single day. You know, we wake up every day, we jump on that Redder Morning Show call, we hear from some of the top tier talent across the United States. And, you know, what does that say about me and Brian? You know, we love to learn. You know, we want to learn, because if we're going to be on here educating you through podcast, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we've got great content and can point you in the right direction on how to have success in today's mortgage market as a next gen loan officer. So,
Love it.
Brian, when the folks out there want to find you, you know, do you want to drop it doesn't matter what, a page and a place, how do they get in touch with you, brother?
I mean, I always tell people to find me on LinkedIn. There's not another Brian Vieaux, Vieaux out there. So follow me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I pretty much have all of our, you know, you'll learn a lot. That's kind of my CRM. So I make sure that if you get to that page, you're going to know who I am and what I'm about. And you'll learn a little bit about FinLocker along the way too.
Yeah. Well, and you should. So, guys, thank you for joining in. Brian, thanks for coming on the show, brother. It was an honor to be on yours. Love having you over here in our space, and let's keep on empowering these folks out there, you know, with all the tools to create success in today's mortgage market. So
right on.
Thank you, brother. Thanks so much. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. This is the Loan Officer Success Partner. Keep coming back for great guests like Brian. Who knows, we may do a repeat, and make sure that you follow, like, comment, subscribe. Hey, and also go over to Brian's podcast, LOL, Loan Officer Life, and, you know, follow that one too, right? You know, find Brian on LinkedIn, you know, make him a friend of yours, because I promise when you see what he's doing over there, if you like what I'm doing, you're going to love his page even more. So until the next time,